Today we hear how Jesus felt about the people he came to serve. And Matthew tells us that his heart was moved with pity because he saw them as troubled and abandoned, very much like sheep without a shepherd. They were lost and without someone to lead them, and they didn't know where to turn to find where they needed help to help them in the life of God's Spirit. And so Jesus called 12 of his disciples and commissioned them to act as his apostles. And he told them to go out into the world and announce to all who will listen that God's kingdom is very near to them. And he told the 12 to pray to God, the Lord of the harvest, to send laborers into his harvest because he means to bring as many as possible into his circle. And so he gave power to the 12 so that they could minister to the crowds just like he himself had been doing. Well, the compassionate Jesus of our gospel reading is now today the compassionate risen Lord. And the risen Lord continues to act on his love and compassion by sending out laborers who will work and labor on his behalf. And in fact, the Lord needs all of us to work as his laborers, if his love and concern for everyone, and especially those who are rejected and oppressed, is to have any impact. The reality is that the harvest is so large that there will likely never be enough laborers for it. Now, the last words of his instructions today were these: without cost you have received, and without cost you are to give. In some ways, it reminds me of that common saying, there is no such thing as a free lunch. And that means that even though something appears to be free, well, it's really not. And if you accept it, like the free lunch, ultimately, you're going to end up paying a price for it. And the assumption is that everything has to be paid for and that there is nothing in this world that we get for nothing. And at least to some extent, there's truth in that understanding. But there's also some truth in what Jesus says today, you received without cost. And the truth is that we should all be able to think of ways in which we've been deeply blessed without our having to earn or deserve or bring about that grace or that gift. Whether it's in the beauty of nature, like a sunrise or a sunset, or very deeply loved family members, or good friends who are always there for you. It's more typical than not that most of us have opportunities to stop and reflect with a sense of appreciation. And it's not unusual to recognize that at some level anyway, we've unexpectedly and without cost been graced and blessed. And as people of faith, we recognize the presence of God within and behind these gifts and blessings. And because we have been freely blessed in so many ways, Jesus asks us to grace others just as freely. And so he encourages us to do that, just that, without looking for or expecting any kind of payment. The Lord's desire is that we give freely out of the abundance that we ourselves have been given. God gives to us without calculating what he's going to get in return from us, and our love for others is supposed to reflect something of that very same quality. And frequently, the needs of God's people are as great today as they were in the time of Jesus. Well, today's gospel reading is a sort of point of transition in Matthew's gospel, and Matthew's focus today begins to shift from the ministry of Jesus to the work of the community that Jesus is bringing about. And from this event forward, Matthew's gospel will be, in a large way, a focus on the work of the church, which Jesus wants to continue after his death and resurrection and ascension. Now, the church is the continuing presence of Christ on the earth, and each member of the church is sent by Jesus to assist with that mission. And Jesus tells us how that should come about. And the first thing we're supposed to do is pray. Jesus tells us that in today's gospel, and really, quite frankly, our work without prayer is not going to bear much fruit, if any. The disciples of today's gospel were then sent out to do missionary work, but the truth is that most of us here today are prevented by circumstances from doing that kind of thing. But there's nothing to prevent us from praying for the spread of the gospel. The disciples that Jesus sent were also given the power over evil spirits and the power to heal. And so those people worked many miracles. Now, in today's world, miracles may not be as frequent or as evident as they were in Jesus' time, but that power is still there in the church. And each of us is called to be an influence of good in the society. The mission that Jesus undertook is continued and extended when we bring the love and compassion of Jesus into the lives of others. And for us, simple, ordinary, daily contacts with people can and should be the way of acceptance and reconciliation and healing. For most of us, our homes, our parish, our workplaces are the missions that we've been given where we spread the gospel message as best we can. When humanity turned from God in the beginning, God did an extraordinary thing. And motivated only by love, God sent Jesus to us. And through his life, death, and resurrection, we've become children of God. And as God's children, we're asked to bring others into that fold. And that involves consistently helping others by our example of reconciliation to God and to each other. Jesus' heart today was moved with pity for the people that he saw. Today, we're asked to share in his compassion and to be his instruments in spreading that love of God. May Jesus continue to be with us as we carry out his desires.